39 years ago, on a cold November night, a young couple stepped onto a ferry in British Columbia and vanished without a sound, and what began as a simple overnight trip turned into one of the most haunting unsolved mysteries in North American history. For decades, their names would echo through police files, unanswered questions, and the grief of two families who never stopped waiting for answers. Before we go deeper into this case, if you are watching this right now, take a second to like this video, drop a comment on where you're watching from, and subscribe to Cold Case 247. Every single action helps keep these cold cases alive and pushes more people to hear these forgotten stories. Viewer discretion is advised. What happened to them is not just a mystery, it is a warning about how close evil can sit to ordinary life without anyone noticing. Tanya Van Queilenborg was only 18 years old. She had just stepped out of high school in Saanich, British Columbia, full of life, full of plans, and standing at the edge of adulthood with that quiet excitement that only comes when everything still feels possible. She was not someone living recklessly or drifting through life. She was grounded, loved, and deeply connected to her family. Her father believed she was safe, especially with the young man she had chosen to travel with. That young man was Jay Cook. He was 20 years old, also from Saanich, and known as responsible, steady, and close to his family. He and Tanya had been dating for about 6 months. It was young love, the kind that feels simple and honest, where every moment together feels like something worth remembering. The trip they were about to take was not some wild adventure. It was supposed to be routine. Jay's father needed heater parts from a supplier in Washington state, and Jay volunteered to make the trip. Tanya decided to go with him, and together they turned a basic errand into a short journey across the border, a chance to spend time together and create memories. She even brought her camera. She wanted to document everything. On the evening of November 18th in the year 1987, they boarded a ferry from Sydney, British Columbia, crossed into Washington state, and continued their route toward Seattle. By late night, around 11:30, they had arrived. And then, nothing. No phone call. No message home. No sign of where they went next. At first, their families thought there must be a simple explanation. A delay. A change of plans. A missed opportunity to call. But as the hours stretched into the next day, worry began to replace patience. The heater parts were never picked up. The families began calling, but the phones rang unanswered. And slowly, a terrible truth began to take shape. Something had gone wrong. Something no one could yet explain. Before we continue deeper into this case, if you are still watching, take a moment right now to like this video, subscribe to Cold Case 247, and drop a comment saying, "I am following this." Let's see who is truly staying with this story until the end. Because what happened next would change everything. Days passed. And then, on November 24th, a discovery was made that would destroy any remaining hope. In a remote rural area near Alger in Skagit County, Washington, a passerby noticed something in a ditch along the roadside. What they found was the body of Tanya Van Queilenborg. Her remains showed clear signs of violence. She had been restrained. She had been assaulted. And she had been killed in a way that suggested both control and cruelty. She had been left exposed in a place where it would take days before anyone found her. She had been missing for nearly a week. During that same time, pieces of evidence began appearing in different locations. Her personal belongings were discovered scattered near transportation areas, including a wallet and keys found not far from a bus station in Bellingham. The family vehicle, a van used for the trip, was later located parked in an area of downtown Bellingham. It was close to where some of Tanya's belongings had been found, as if someone had moved through the area deliberately, leaving behind fragments of a story no one could yet fully understand. Inside the van, investigators found disturbing evidence. Items that suggested restraint. Protective materials. Receipts confirming ferry travel. And crucial biological traces that would later become the foundation of the entire investigation. But there was something missing. Tanya's camera. The very object she had brought to capture memories of the trip was gone. Taken. Never recovered. And still, there was no sign of Jay. For a brief moment, investigators considered the possibility that he might still be alive. That he might have been separated from her. That he might turn up somewhere with answers. But that hope did not last. 2 days later, on November 26th, the second discovery was made. Jay Cook was found dead in Snohomish County, Washington. His body had been left beneath a bridge in a remote area near Monroe. The condition of his remains told a different story from Tanya's, but the connection between them was unmistakable. He had been beaten with a blunt object. He had been strangled using cord-like materials. There were signs of restraint. And near his body were zip ties matching those found in connection with Tanya. 2 victims. 2 separate locations. Roughly 60 miles apart. And one offender responsible for both. The brutality was not random. It was controlled. It was deliberate. And it was staged in a way that made the investigation even more complicated, spreading across multiple jurisdictions in Washington state. Investigators now faced a case that stretched across Skagit County, Snohomish County, Whatcom County, and King County. Evidence was scattered. Witnesses were limited. And the timeline between the ferry arrival and the discoveries remained a complete blank. The only solid physical lead came from biological evidence recovered from Tanya's clothing. DNA. But in 1987, DNA analysis was still in its earliest stages. There was no database of universal profiles. No immediate system for matching unknown samples to known offenders. The science existed, but the infrastructure to solve the crime did not. The profile extracted from the evidence was labeled simply as an unknown male contributor. Known only as Individual A. For years, investigators chased every possible lead. More than 200 names were considered. Serial offenders were examined and eliminated. False tips came in from across the country. Some leads were promising, but none held. One investigator, Detective Jim Scharf, refused to let the case die. It became a defining part of his career. He revisited files again and again, chasing every advancement in forensic science as it emerged. But year after year, the result remained the same. No match. No suspect. No closure. Only questions. By the early 2000s, the DNA profile had been entered into national databases containing millions of criminal records. Still nothing. The killer was not in the system. Which meant one terrifying possibility remained. He had never been caught before. He had never been tested. He was living freely. Somewhere. As time passed, the case became one of Washington state's most well-known cold cases. A case where investigators had evidence but no identity. A name without a face. A crime without a suspect. And still, the families waited. Waiting through holidays. Through birthdays. Through decades of silence. But everything began to change in the year 2017. Advances in forensic technology introduced a new method, genetic genealogy. This technique allowed investigators to use DNA not just to identify a person directly, but to trace family relationships through shared genetic markers. It was no longer just about matching profiles. It was about rebuilding entire family trees from biological data. A forensic company, Parabon Nanolabs, joined the investigation. They worked alongside genetic experts, including C.C. Moore, one of the leading figures in the field. Meanwhile, ordinary people were uploading their DNA to public genealogy databases, searching for distant relatives, unaware that their data could one day be used to solve a murder. One of those people unknowingly carried a connection to the killer. Investigators uploaded the unknown DNA profile into a genealogy database containing roughly 1 million profiles. From there, distant relatives were identified. Shared ancestry patterns began to appear. Family branches were reconstructed backward through generations, then traced forward again. It was a process of elimination, connection, and reconstruction. Slowly, a narrowing path emerged. And then, after hours of analysis, a single name appeared at the center of the tree. William Earl Talbot II. A man living in Washington state. A man who had been in his 20s at the time of the murders. A man who lived within close proximity to where the crimes had taken place. Investigators began building his profile. In the late 1980s, he had worked as a delivery driver, moving through routes that covered the same regions connected to the victim's disappearance. At one point, he had been fired from his job, leaving him with time and mobility during the period of the murders. As more details were reviewed, the connections became harder to ignore. But genetic genealogy alone was not enough for arrest. It was an investigative lead, not courtroom evidence. So investigators needed a direct match. They followed him. They observed him. And eventually, they waited for a moment where he discarded something that could legally be collected. A coffee cup. It was recovered and sent for testing. When the results returned, the confirmation was absolute. A match to individual A. The statistical probability of another human sharing the same profile was described in the range of 1 in 180 quadrillion. The unknown had finally been identified. The arrest of William Earl Talbot II brought an end to a mystery that had lasted more than 3 decades. A case that had begun with 2 young people stepping onto a ferry ended with a breakthrough that changed forensic science forever. But for the families, the passage of time could never be undone. 2 lives were lost in 1987. And justice arrived in a form no one could have imagined when the investigation began. If you are still watching this story right now, drop a comment saying, "Still here." Let's see who made it to the end of this case. And if you found this story powerful, like this video, subscribe to Cold Case 247, and turn on notifications for more true crime documentaries that bring forgotten cases back into the light. Because some stories do not end when the crime is committed. They only end when the truth is finally found.